Okay. So for my final, I decided to research virtual reality and the advancements made in that field. Um, and it was very interesting as I found that most of the advancements taking place seem to be mostly in the medical field. And so I found, studies done using VR in helping motor performance in children with cerebral palsy, and helping upper extremity function in daily living activities in stroke patients, balance assessment responsiveness, and I have also found one that's, I guess, slightly outside of the medical field that is that is using VR to help people with autism spectrum disorder with their joint attention skills, and I'll talk more about that later on. And so, in a study done by Armoni, this is the study with the helping children with cerebral palsy. Um, it was designed with two different groups. Obviously, as most studies are done, with an intervention group and a control group. Both groups still continued their normal treatments that they were already in, and then they were they did a virtual reality video game 2 times a week for 45 minutes over an 8-week period. And then when they were doing this video game, they would stand on these like pressure plates, basically. They're force plates, I guess is what they're called, and it would kind of measure the weight that they were putting on their feet, and it would measure their sway, and then based off of that, kind of their balance would show their progression over the time. And that study found that the intervention group showed significant improvements in those areas compared to the control group. And then in the next study, it studied the upper extremity function and daily living activities in stroke patients, and it had 24 patients involved. And they were randomly assigned into two groups, and then the study. This was a 12-week period study, and let's see. With what they did, the experimental group showed significantly greater improvement in the daily living activities compared to the control group. However, there was actually no significant difference between the groups in upper extremity function. But still, that information can still be used to help with the daily living activities. And then the next study that talked about it actually was using virtual reality to make modifications on the standard balance error scoring system, which, as I learned from the paper, the BESS is what that's called, balance error scoring system. It assesses the postural stability control, and is an outcome for pathologies such as mild traumatic brain injury, sports-related concussions, ligament rupture, stroke, and other disorders. And so before they ran the actual trial, they had both groups, the control group and the other group, intervention group, they had them run the normal BESS as well as the VR BESS, to kind of get an idea of what it would look like. And then after that, then they actually ran the actual trial by doing both the BESS and the VR BESS twice in a counterbalanced randomized order. And their results found that the VR BESS provides a standardized, effective way to increase postural stability in a clinical setting. So that was sweet. And the last article I found very cool because I'm actually working in the field of autism, and so I wanted to see if there was any advancements made in that field. So there was a study done in 2020 that worked on helping to see if VR can help people on the autism spectrum to improve their joint attention, which that's basically if you're talking with someone and they look at something or point at something, those type of things. Looking would be the most, I guess, the hardest to pick up. But if they look at something and if you look with them, that's kind of like a joint attention on that thing. And so they were looking if they could work with that through virtual reality. And they used a VR desktop on this study because there was a possibility of people on the with autism spectrum disorder that headset might be kind of overwhelming. So they used a desktop, and it was cool because they also programmed the virtual reality game, I guess you could call it. They made it so the characters used the hierarchical prompt protocol, which in the case of this with joint attention, if they look and then if the person were to get the answer wrong, then it would try that trial again, but rather than just looking, they might point, I think was the next one, or different things like that. And so they would work up to where it was easy for the person to look at that item and remember what it is. And they found that this study was mainly to gain to gather baseline data for future to implement this in the future. And so it was just kind of seeing what the baseline is and see. They compared typical developing children with the children on the autism spectrum disorder. And they found that 100% of the typically developing children only needed that first prompt hierarchy, whereas, just looking at the item. Whereas the children with autism spectrum disorder needed, usually the most popular prompt was the third level prompt to get the correct answer. And so it's very interesting to see the different advancements made in the in virtual reality and the help that it can bring. And it'll be very interesting to see where it goes in the future.